Hi, I'm Kevin Dole with the Office of the Kansas Fire Marshal. While a big part of our mission is to protect Kansas from the dangers of fire, when it comes to burn injuries, fire is only one of the culprits, especially for children. What can we do to protect our loved ones from terrible burn injuries? Let's take a look.
Well, I was playing with my sister, and then I thought my daddy was done with the oven. So then I tried to touch my hand and I burned it.
When my son was 2 years old, we had already had the conversations about safety in the kitchen. We had a child-safe zone, so when we were cooking, he knew not to come in the kitchen. But what we weren't counting on is his idea of how ovens worked. So for him, when he was 2, in his mind, when we took a pan off of the stove, he thought that it was fine. And we weren't counting on him running into the kitchen right after taking a pan off the stove. And he threw down his little step stool and he put his hand right on top of the oven to pull himself up. And there's always a scream that you know from your child that he's in intense pain. So my husband was the one who was in the kitchen with him and I was in the living room. And I ran in, and what we noticed was on his right hand, he had put it down on the coil heating element. And when we pulled it back, he had distinct burns all the way in the ring pattern on his hand and then up in his arm.
So in fiscal year 2015, we saw around 450 burn patients. Those are patients that we admitted to our burn center here at KU Hospital. Of those patients, 55 of them were pediatric patients. The rest were adults. And when I say pediatrics, that's under the age of 14. Most commonly, we see flame burns. That's our number one mechanism of injury for adults. The second most common is scalds for adults. And for children, it's actually quite the opposite. So for children, the most common are scald injuries, and then the second most common are flame injuries. And so when I talk about flame injuries, that can be anything from a house fire, a bonfire, adding an accelerant to an open flame, things of that nature. Scald injuries can be from both liquid and steam scalds, simple things like cooking, drawing a bath, that sort of a thing at home. So that's how you can imagine scalds are more common in children because those are things that they're around every day. We see a lot of scalds due to children pulling hot objects onto themselves. So if mom or dad have a coffee, whether it's a mug, that sort of a thing, if it's too close to the edge, or even a pot of coffee, sometimes they pull that down on themselves. Boiling water on the stove is also another common issue. Bath time is a really big issue. So whether the bath water's just been turned on and filled up and the kids go to get in themselves, or the kids get placed in the bath without the water being tested.
You know, a lot of these burns happen in our home, and unfortunately they can be preventable, and sometimes it happens because we leave our children unattended around these things that can cause burns. And I can only imagine how a parent would feel if their child was accidentally burned. It would be a heavy burden to bear. The first thing we can do is set our water heaters to a safe temperature of 120 degrees. This temperature is safe. If a child accidentally were to use the hot water knob when we weren't paying attention, the temperature is low enough to not burn them or scald them immediately. Second, don't hold a child while you are cooking. The kitchen is full of all kinds of dangers, and a lot of us might hold a small child while we're cooking, multitask, but unfortunately that is not as safe as we could be. Third thing is those kids love to reach up for things, so use the back burners on our stove. Make sure our pot handles are turned towards the back so kids aren't tempted to walk by and grab a pot handle or reach up on the stove and touch one of those front burners if we don't have to use. And the last thing is keep matches, lighters, gasoline away from the reach of children.
At the end, he finally healed and he can use it, and he knows now not to touch the stove. He doesn't touch it at all unless he asks one of us first, and we were very lucky.